Okay, so we will start in a moment here with practically speaking here, this will be out of order for your books, from what your books are in, the booklets there. And I'm not sure exactly what, if I could borrow one and see, just for a moment here, can I take your book or your booklet here just to see what?
Not the order.
No, yeah. So this would go into temperament and character, but so responding to the needs of time, and I think interest of what you have focused on already. You have the material here of the temperaments, and with that, there's a few things that we'll touch on, but not right away. I put a lot of that into what we covered previously when talking about the virtues with some of the different temperaments, and I will speak more about the parts that were left out during a conversation about more practical implementation within the school with your students. And what we're doing now would be just after the temperaments chapter, if you will, and would be the discover your mission portion here. So, yeah. Okay. So magnanimity and humility are the heart of leadership, like they're the heart of who you are, right? You need to develop magnanimity and humility, and they're the substance and the essence of leadership, what leadership is. But the question arises then, well, how do I actually develop magnanimity and humility? Because these are not mere values. And it is worth pointing out, maybe just now, because we're transitioning again back from sort of the abstract to the personal, to say what is the difference between virtues and values. But I think often we are prone, perhaps, to say the word virtues, but what we intend, what we mean in our mind is values. And they're different, both important, but they're different. Values are something that are outside of us. Values are safe. Values are something I hold out here and they don't implicate me directly. These are the values that I hold. I value faithfulness and I value truth and I value good things for good people, something like this. That's all fine and good, but if you've told me a list of your values, you've told me nothing about yourself. To value something just means literally that you hold it as important, right? But this is not you. That doesn't really do anything to you or for you. Your virtues are not safe. Virtues are not safe things to deal with because they implicate you. You cannot speak of virtue without exposing yourself. Because virtue is, as we said, it is a habitus that you have or don't have. You have these habitus, and they are either virtue or vice. So when you speak of virtue, you want to tell me of your virtues, it is hard to do so because it's laid bare. You're laying yourself bare for everyone to see. That to think about virtue and to begin to work on virtue and not merely identifying your values means to have to be transformed, to change. You cannot be content. This is an area where it's harder to lie to yourself. We speak of our virtues. It begins to be, it implicates me. This maybe, I'm not sure if this carries the same nuance. If you commit a crime and somebody charges you with the crime, you must go to the court. It's like that, right? If I talk about my virtues, I am now bringing myself before the judge, as it were, right? I cannot speak of the virtues without necessity of myself being changed, being reformed, right? Because I know that what the virtues I have or don't have are known to those who see me. But my values are safe. I can put that out there. It can be a shield or a mask to say, well, I value these things. I value good education and all of this. Values and virtues are important, both, But values are, if you think navigation at sea, sailing a ship, values are like the stars, the constellations, by which you can guide your course. But they say nothing of your ability. You can know all the stars, you can have all the star charts and the compass and the things to know how to navigate, to know the stars and the directions and everything where you should go. It says nothing of your ability to actually sail the ship from the port to the harbor. That is the virtues. Virtue is the actual ability to your skill at sailing the ship rightly. Now, if you try, you have all the skill in knots and tying and pulling ropes and setting sails and rowing and keeping up a ship. That's good, but it lacks direction. It's really, you're still unable to sail it to port if you don't know the stars, right? If you don't know where you're going. So you may have some great skills, even moral skills, the beginnings of virtues. But if you don't have the right values, you don't know where you're going. So you need values, but they're necessary, but they're very insignificant compared to the virtues, right? So when we speak of virtue, this can't be merely something to say, well, yes, I am magnanimous, I'm humble, this is very good. What you mean is you value those things. What's important is not that you value them. What's important is that you become them, right? Does this distinction make sense? I'm explaining well or poorly? Okay, good. So that's the difference between the virtues and the values, but then how do I develop the virtues? How do we develop particularly magnanimity? If really the heart of things is magnanimity and humility, the heart of magnanimity, the striving for greatness, is your mission, your personal mission, your mission in life. I guess you understand. So we must discover our mission. You must discover your personal mission, your life mission. What is your mission? A mission is a call to action. It's distinct from your vocation. Your vocation is a call to live in a certain way, a call to be in a certain way, a certain state of life. But your mission is a call to do a certain thing. Your vocation is a sense of calling to a way of being, a certain state of life. You may be called to, we're called to holiness, at one level, but we're called to leadership, sure. But your mission is in some ways more subjective, perhaps you might say, than merely a state of life. But as whatever your state of life is, what is your mission? What is it that you are meant to accomplish in this world that you and you alone and none other can do? Right. So you must ask yourself first and then work out the answer for the rest of your life, But ask yourself two questions. The answer, this is my mission, is the answer to two questions. The first of which is, who am I? Who am I? Ask yourself, who am I? And then the second question is, what is the cultural or social challenge that I want to respond to with passion and dedication? What is that social or cultural thing, the specific thing that drives me, that ignites me, says, not this, I care about this thing. Yes?
Wouldn't there be another question in between the two?
Sure, perhaps. What is that?
Who gives me the mission?
Who gives me the mission? Yes. No, this is true. This is true. You were created by God to do a certain thing, and He may work through circumstances. His providence, maybe others in authority over you, perhaps. Is this what you mean, or is something else too?
Humans always need somebody to be
To be sent by somebody. Yeah. Yeah? Right. Yes. Thank you. That is exactly right. Your mission is not something that you simply grasp, like Adam and Eve taking the fruit, but something you are given, because it can't be. It's what determines your mission is not merely your whims, but really looking at the order of providence. Yep, that you are either explicitly sent by somebody, authority to do a certain task. I mean, I think of some Jesuit missionary from the 16th century or something, right? And the superior, Saint Ignatius says to him, "You will go to China." Okay, hey, that makes his job very easy. He knows what his mission is. Francis Xavier has it set, right? But how he carries it out, that's his responsibility to navigate more or less well over the course of time. But that is again, it's not something that you can choose. I think that's exactly right. Well, you choose it, but it's not your whims that dictate it. Does this, you understand me? It's not merely what I want to be an artist. Okay, but if you're no good at art, you can do some things, but maybe your skill set lies elsewhere. Maybe your circumstances put you in a place where this other thing is demanded of you. And you may not be an artist. You might like the idea of being an artist, or you might like the idea of being a filmmaker, or an opera singer, or a school teacher, or whatever, and it's just not really for you. And so now you're fighting reality, and there's that humility that we have to accept. So what are the things that go into answering this? You ask yourself these questions, and the things that go into answering it is first, your story. Oh yeah. Please. Oh, and by the way, you're two bold individuals. By all means, feel free to jump in with questions, comments, concerns, objections, draw a sword and issue a challenge. I'm fine with that.
I don't know, maybe you will be talking about it, but
yeah.
Most people maybe in the world, they are so occupied with just normal, general life that they wouldn't what is the cultural or social challenge? Say, okay, I don't have time about thinking about the cultural challenge because I have so many things alone in my family with the things that I have to go to work and have the money and stuff. So I think for most people in the world, this is a problem. I mean, they cannot go to this.
Yes.
Thing.
And is in the.
What about these people?
Yeah, they are enslaved. We are, right? In society, it is in many ways a slave society. You are kept, and I don't mean necessarily some individual person doing this, but the spirit of the age, if you will, has an interest in keeping you divided and distracted. That's this chain that we have carry with us all the time is a constant distraction, because it's hard for you to become a saint if you're always distracted. It's hard for you to forget even sanctity. It's hard for you to be magnanimous. It's hard for you to achieve greatness if you're barely getting by feeding yourself. You cannot become fully human that way. And so you are fighting a battle. Yeah, there's a battle to do this. Somebody in those circumstances, this is very true. And many people that I talk with are very quite late in life, have never asked themselves this question, and then something happens. They face crises because they don't have a stable sense of self. They don't have a core. They've just been responding to the provocations. They are like, how does the Bible say? They are like the chaff that is blown by the wind, right, from place to place, responding merely, right? They're the puppets of circumstances. They are not free people. The only free people are those who know their mission and are carrying it out. At least that's the first step in freedom. There's an immense freedom that comes with knowing your mission and living out your mission, because you have an identity in yourself. You have a self, I feel like there's probably a better expression in German than there is in English, but a self-standing, right? You can be here, standing of yourself. You have this basis, this stabilitas inside of you. And so this is who I am, this is what I'm about. And your identity is not, you are neither merely spread out, responding to all these things, nor is your identity so invested in your job title or your circumstances, whatever they might be, that you feel you face an existential crisis if anything should change. You see, you have to become a self. And that means, another way of phrasing that is to be living out your mission and not merely be a product of the environment around you. It is a challenge. It is a challenge to do that in this day and age, but it is necessary if you want to survive.
Yeah, but if you have no time to actually think about higher problems or this society, cultural and social challenge,
With the first question, who are you?
So I'm just wondering, many people
Yeah.
don't have the capacity, either because their education isn't enough,
Mm-hmm.
or because they have no time because they're so occupied with all their life,
Mm-hmm.
that they would like maybe to ask these questions and do these things and have a mission and do something,
Mm-hmm.
But they're so absorbed with the general life that they wouldn't be able to do it. So can they have, for example, some small mission,
Mm-hmm.
something that they can do in their own thing?
Yes.
Good, isn't it?
Yes. I think, to work backwards from that, that is, as teachers, you have this wonderful, you've got young people, right? How do you teach young people to think in terms of mission? Because they're too young, really, to fully know what their mission is. You just haven't lived long enough. Some 13, 14-year-old, you barely differentiate yourself from your family. You're still really in infancy comparatively in terms of your self-identity, at 12 or 13. But they can begin thinking in terms of mission. I'm illustrating an example. But this is how I would teach children to begin thinking this way, is to give them small missions. A quest. You must do this. Here's your quest. You have like the Knights of King Arthur or something. You have a quest to go on. And these small quests can build the habit of thinking in that way of what is my mission. And in fact, is immensely helpful for children to begin to already orient their life around mission, so that when these things begin to align now, where we later have to look back over my life, say, what are those, as we'll see, so what is my story, what is the common thread, and these things that we'll be discussing here, or that I'll be presenting here in a moment. We can give them the advantage of training them in these small ways, like you said, small missions. And I think this is true for children, and as a pedagogical principle is just true for human beings. If you can start with small things, you can awaken in them something of a sense of their mission. Now, they need not be Christians to understand what your mission is, right? You need not be fully aware that it is given by God in order to have a sense of mission, right? That's just true. It helps orient it, but not necessary starting place. You know what I mean? And
But it needs somebody to dialogue with.
Say again?
It needs somebody to dialogue with.
Yes.
To
To find your mission, yeah. And it is because you're not closed in on yourself. You can't discover it just... Exactly. Parents, teachers, friends. I mean, that's the thing so I was giving a seminar to a school, to teachers, right? And there was a guy who was on the administration of the board of the school, younger guy than yourself, but older than me, and he came to me later. He's a laborer. He works in construction, like this, building houses, right? It's fine, good guy, but he says, "My God, I've never thought about my life this way." And he just plunged into this crisis. Because he's like, I'm 43 and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Everything has just been responding to this thing. And here I've got a wife and a family. And I've wasted my life, And I said, whoa. Is there a doctor in the house? This is a crisis. But I hope he's okay now. But but the reality is that he was so provoked by this because it started to actually give articulation to a growing fear and anxiety inside of him that the life unexamined, is problematic, and he doesn't know what his mission is in life, and so now hopefully he's on the path of discovering it. But this is not unusual, right? This is what we call a midlife crisis often. Somebody's, at some point in their career and they face a brick wall and they run into it. What am I doing? I have no purpose, no meaning. Or, parents whose children finally grow up and they all leave. And they say, oh my God, and the spouses look at each other and say, I have no clue who you are. We haven't spoken in 30 years, And then they get divorced. There's this fall apart thing. Because you have no core. There's no stability in who you are. So you don't know your mission. And so it's hard. You don't have the time. But if it's like health. If you don't have the time to eat well and rest and exercise, you have to make that time to get sick. You see. I think it is necessary. And I think you're right, though, in small ways. But dialoguing, discussing with people, congratulations. Thanks for volunteering. You can help them discover their mission. You know. What were you saying? Yeah. Okay. Also, yes, it does. Yes, this is also true. This is also true. Like Augustine does in the Confessions. You know, Augustine of Hippo. He does this, and actually, he does precisely this. Your story is inseparable from your mission. You want to know your mission? You must understand your story. It is your identity. You understand yourself in a narrative framework. That is, as human beings, we are the way that we work identity is narratively. That is to say, story, right? Which is why literature is so powerful, is because it cuts to the core of our very identities. So your self-identity, when you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, "Hi, self, how are you? Better than you look, I'm sure, yeah, whatever you do." You are, when you're saying self, even if you don't articulate it in this way, you are mentally, neurologically, psychologically thinking narratively. And so each one of us carries with us a narrative that we are continually telling to ourselves in the world, in the way that we live, and continually writing in the things that we do, continuing it on. And that narrative that we carry with us may be more or less true to reality. And so we see in somebody like St. Augustine of Hippo is writing in the Confessions, what he is doing is not telling us what his biography is somehow for us. No. You're peeping over his shoulder. This is voyeurism. You're looking over Augustine's shoulder into his private life as he's engaging in, if you'll permit me to use the terminology, a therapeutic act, a therapeutic process of restructuring his narrative in dialogue with God. Right? You read the Confessions, you see he's not talking to you, he's talking to God. And so you're getting one half of a telephone conversation. And, you know, that incident where he's some young boy and he steals the pear and he goes, a couple pages on this notion of stealing a pear. Why does that matter? That wasn't the first time that he's worked this out. And I would bet that for most of his life, he hadn't actually thought much about that. Now we hold this as like a famous incident. I think for most of his life, he probably did not consider this pear-stealing event in his life as significant at all. But in the process of actually writing out his narrative, he sets out at the very beginning, it's not, God, I'm going to tell you my story. It's not, God, I'm going to work out my story in dialogue with you. It's, God, I have a version of my story that I've been carrying with me, and I'm going to lay it out before you, and I'm going to edit it and redact it and rewrite it, and we're going to do this together so that the Augustine at the end of the story, not the Augustine in the story, but Augustine the author, when he was done writing it, is no longer the same man as he was when he began writing it. It itself is a process of conversion. His identity was transforming in the act of writing this. See, he wrote his story. And there's others who do this as well. It's just a common example that we're familiar with. But your story is inseparable from your mission. It's not your whims. You can't just simply say, well, this is going to be my mission. You are embedded in a context in the world. You come into the world, not of your own choosing, not in the circumstances of your choosing, but in we don't have an English word, so I borrow from Heidegger, Geworfenheit. Is this the right word? Something like that. You're thrown somehow into it. And you have to become a self within this. You have to carry out your mission within this. And your mission is not separated from this circumstance of being thrown into the world. It is, in fact, a part of your mission. In many ways, you might say, it is your missa est. It is your being sent. As that you are created in the middle of things, in medias res, as like the Iliad begins, right in the middle of what's going on. And so there you are. And it's your story then that determines what your mission is. And so you need to understand what your story is, the right version of your story. And you need to, in order to do this, you need to delve into your past and discern its meaning. You need to contemplate your life and begin to find the appropriate words to articulate it. And it's not enough to merely do this in your head. You must write with a pen and a paper, and you must write out your story. And it doesn't need to be, for some people, if you're at all like St. John Henry Newman, recently canonized, I have an idea, and he would stand at this desk and just write. No errors, no lines, no scratches out. The guy, it was just like perfect prose, would just flow through him. This is some supernatural charism that is beyond me, right? Even my scheduling notes for today. It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. No, switch this, and there's arrows, and there's lines, and there's scribbles out. I can't even read this anymore. He's able to, most people I cannot do that, right? But, if you're at all like me, and I only know what I'm like, I don't know what you're like, you may find that you write a little bit on a piece of paper here, and you write a little bit over here, and then maybe you're drawing some lines, and you're adding some things, and crossing out things, like that. However it looks, the writing out of your story is an essential part of the process, because you're able to freeze these things that are outside of space and time, your thoughts. You're able to take them and freeze them like a picture frame to be able to see. And as a portrait, then now you can look at all the details that are there and begin to unpack other things. You found, I know, we all have this experience, when you begin writing something, you discover new things. As you're writing, new ideas occur, and it's like it writes itself. It's like it is an organic thing, a plant of some sort that begins to blossom in the process of writing. So begin to write out your story. Now, what is your story? Your story doesn't begin with just you. It doesn't begin when you were born. It's like it's not going to end when you die. Your story began a long time before you were born. You are another chapter yet not another chapter. You enter into a story that's already in existence. I mean, your parents before, you wouldn't be here. Like, each one of us is a great might not have been, right? We each are contingent on so many fragile things for the beginning of our existence. But your story, if your parents hadn't met on a certain day, if that first date hadn't gone well, if they'd have been sick on a certain month or not near each other, and then, come back months later, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be you, right? Everything is so consistent. That's just one generation, to say nothing of previous. I mean, the sheer mathematics of that boggle the mind if you're thinking in terms of probability. But you are here. And each one of these people that precedes you has a story. And you're a part of that story because they live on in you. You are not merely yourself. You have a people, and you must understand who your people are. Who are your people? And that question is both chronological, who are the people that live on in me, and also contemporaneous, present tense, who are my people? Who are the people that I am called to serve? Who are the people of whom I am a part? What is the people that I belong to? Because they live on primarily and precisely because there are people who live on in me, and their stories live on in me, just as I will live on in the legacy that I leave, whether that's biological children or the many children that pass through your classrooms who you leave an impact, an impression on. And because the people, your people live on in you, it also means by implication that you were in them, because you are in fact the fruit of the hopes and dreams of these countless generations. Why did they keep getting up? Why did they go to work? Why did they go through these difficulties? To provide for their family, their children and their children's children, unto countless generations, and that's you. And in that way, you were in them too. So your story, even your story, begins a long time before you were even born. And this can be a very powerful thing, because you are never alone. Even if those parts of your story contain elements that are not so pleasant. In your personal life, things that have happened to you directly, or perhaps the circumstances of your ancestry. These need not be limitations, but this is a strength and can give light to your mission, to your life in the world. What is your mission in life can in large part be shaped, and not negatively, not only negatively, by things that have happened. This is why retelling your narrative and making sure that the story that you are telling that you hold as your identity is in fact the best version of it, or whether it could be improved. Talk with the master author and work that out. But it can make your heart strong, because if you can answer the question, who are you and where do you come from? Who are your people? Where are your roots? What are your roots? Then you are strong. If you do not have roots, if you cut yourself off from your roots, and we live in a society where in America this has been a long time happening. My understanding is that in Europe it is more recent, of many people beginning to move away in large numbers from where they are rooted. And a growing sense, and it's not just geographical, but that is in part. We saw it again earlier, very intensely during the Industrial Revolution, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. People left their places. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to live their whole life in the place where they were born, but you must carry with you a sense of rootedness. And there is a growing sense among people of lacking roots. And if you do not have roots, you will freeze, you will die with the frost. Only deep roots are not reached by the frost. And so you need to be sure that your feet are firmly planted on the ground somewhere. And again, it need not be merely geographical. Preferably, it's not only geographical, but you need to have roots. You need to have a sense of self, and a sense of self that is not merely self-created me that sprang into being some decades ago. No, it needs to be a sense of self that is rooted in a tradition that is much greater and much bigger than yourself, because that is where you can find stability and security. And from that, have the strength then to be able to say, this is my mission, this is what I am about, and it's not only me facing the monster, it's an entire nation of people that have felt, that that live on in me, that is facing the monster, facing the dragon, what have you. Right? So practically speaking, what are some of these specific things that you can write about, things that you should consider? When you write, take note, or this would be like something I would say, take notes on in preparation for writing an essay, for example, the same kind of preparation. So take notes on the people that have been instrumental in your life. Who are the people, and that may be your parents, your grandparents, it may be teachers that you had, or other individuals, maybe colleagues now. People have been instrumental in your life, and what is the impact that they've had on you? Begin to write out, what are the books or the movies, the music, the art, these things that you encounter that propel you to unexpected emotional and spiritual heights? You know, a particular song, or a particular work of literature, or something that you don't know what it is, but you know that experience, right? Where this, and all of a sudden you're like weeping, your heart, you feel the tingles, right? This feeling of being propelled. What are those things? And maybe explore why. What is that? Because there's something that resonates in there. There's something of myself that I can see in that and learn from it. Write about your country. Whatever your country is. I don't know whether that's, an entire nation, or if that's a local region, or what have you. Depends on the circumstances. But write about your country. What is its greatness in history? What is its greatness? What is its culture? The temperament, if you will, of the people? What are its dreams? Each nation, in many ways, has a mission and a dream and a personality, because a nation is only made up of people who themselves have dreams and personalities and missions. And so a nation, in some ways, often coalesces around this. And so what is my nation? What is my country? Who are my people? And to be honest about the good things, and to stand by them, and cherish them, and honest about the bad things, the things that you profoundly dislike, that do not belong and must be eradicated, and to identify those things. And to be able to foster in yourself a righteous anger against what does not belong, so that it can be removed like a splinter in your hand, a piece of wood, sharp, you got to pull it out. It's injurious. It's injurious to you. You must pull it out, right? You don't just say, oh, well, it's unpleasant, but it's there. Oh, no, because you're going to become very unpleasant to deal with if you have a splinter in your skin that is bothering you. You become irritable, which means you're intolerable to us. So, we must have the courage to do these things. Write also about the ideals that you're willing to fight for. Because even the person who's distracted by day-to-day life and just struggling to survive, working multiple jobs, has something they care about in life. There's something they cherish and they value. It may be unexamined, but it's there. They think about it when they're laying in bed before they fall asleep to get up the next day and do it again. They're thinking about it when they get bored of the monotony of work and their mind wanders off. They have ideals, they have dreams. And begin to write about those things. What are those ideals? That would be like your vows, which may be different from you, than from you, and from you. You may value different things. And then what are the key events in your life until now? Discover their meaning. Augustine does this with the pear incident, stealing of the pear. Now, what you write in your story, and this is a very practical process, and you will actually be, I give you a forewarning, you are getting homework, you are getting a project to do. You will be getting a workbook, a booklet that has this and more specific questions and prompts, exercises to do, to begin to write out, to say, how can I articulate my mission? And you may have, some of you may have a very strong sense of what your mission is already, but to be able to articulate it in a way that you can convey to other people, not least of which your students, for example, so they can see by your example how to do this themselves. But you'll be working through some of these exercises over time, not now, but you begin with these questions now, and then there's a tool to help you, not to do it for you, but a tool to help prompt more thoughts and your ability to write it out and articulate it. But when you write your story, it must be dramatic, poetic, symbolic, and short. Dramatic to make it attractive to yourself and to others, the way that you articulate it. It has to be poetic in order to capture the greatness of little things. Small, insignificant things might be imbued with meaning, might be full of meaning. Symbolic to make it universal and unforgettable, right? My mission must be applicable in a variety of different circumstances and unforgettable. And it must be short, that is to say concise, so that it is easy to carry with you. It focuses merely on what's important, it focuses just on what's important. Then you must also write about what your talents are. What are the things that you are good at? And being honest with yourself in this area is quite difficult, but that's where your friends who are not too close to you are really, really helpful at answering these questions. What am I good at? I might know what I'm good at. I might think I know what I'm good at. But the people around me who spend lots of time with me, yet don't feel so intimate with me that they're afraid to tell me the truth, are very good, very helpful to ask them, all right, here's what I think I'm good at. Could you tell me what you think this is true, or do you think I'm good at? Or you just ask them, what are my skills? What am I good at? Am I good at this? Am I good at that? You know, is this my talent? Do I have a talent for this? Because there's things you might be good at, but if I know you well enough, I might be able to say, there's certain things that come very natural to you. You are most alive when you do this kind of thing. Does that make sense? And that's much easier for other people to see in us than for us to see in ourselves. And I think that's the question, that's the way to frame the question, is what is it that I do that when I'm doing that, I'm most myself. I am most alive when I do this kind of thing. People who spend a lot of time with you are very good at answering that question for you, and that is very helpful to get that kind of feedback. Because then you can serve with your talents. And when you understand your temperament, and you've read the book, Temperament to Character, we understand temperaments, all these. Your temperament itself is a talent. It is a gift. You come naturally, if you're melancholic, you have a gift for ideas, to break the status quo, to have a vision for what could be. If you have a choleric temperament, you have a gift for taking those dreams and transforming them into a big project and organizing people to accomplish a goal. If you have more of a sanguine temperament, you've got the natural gift of organizing people. They get enthusiastic about what you get enthusiastic about and getting them gathered around the right. You might not be the most organized, but that's fine. We can work on that. But you can gather them around a certain goal to accomplish a great thing. And if you have a phlegmatic temperament, you have a natural gift for balanced rationality to ensure long-term success to any project, to say, you know, maybe we need to consider this. There's some finances here, the material things here, and maybe organizationally we could structure this way, you know, and ensure success and stability long-term for an endeavor. So each person, with no matter what your temperament, has a gift that comes naturally to you in doing this. When you articulate your mission into a statement, if you will, and I don't mean a mission statement like an organization might have, but a way of articulating your mission, right? Some phrase that you can say, if I were to ask you a year from now, what is your mission? Or when you're talking to your students, as you inevitably do, about helping them discover their mission, and they ask you, what's your mission? You have a way to answer them that is understandable, that is concise. It must be both broad and narrow, conceptually. Broad enough to be applicable in a variety of different circumstances, because your mission is one and the same, regardless of what position you may have or what organization you work in. You might be a teacher now, you might be a dean later, or a headmaster, or maybe an engineer, maybe a variety of different things that you may do in life, right? I mean, first year teaching, it doesn't mean it's your last year teaching, but sometimes you might end up teaching for the rest of your life, or you may find that you teach for a few years and then you go do something else. Not to pick on you, but just, to highlight an example. I taught in a high school, then I was a dean, and now I no longer teach in a high school, but I still work in this world. So, my mission is one and the same, but it's carried out in different capacities, in different stages in life. It needs to be narrow enough that it's specific enough to be compelling each and every day to get out of bed. Not so broad to be applicable to everything. Like, my mission is to do good to people. That's fine. It's not very helpful, not very motivating. About it has to be. There has to be some specificity to it. And then your personal mission and the mission of your organization need to be like a symphony. They need to be harmonious with one another. If you're in the school you're in, right, you know the mission of your school. You obviously need to sort of be behind it, agree 100% with the mission of the school in order for this kind of thing to be successful. But you can't really get behind it unless you know what your personal mission is. You need to know what your life mission is in order to have that stability to dedicate yourself, to give yourself to this corporate mission, group mission of the organization. And you may find that your mission, your personal life mission, is not able to be lived out. I don't say incompatible with, because if they're all good things, they're all compatible. But if your personal life mission needs to be able to be lived out where you are. And if it's not able to be lived out within the context of, speaking to you specifically, not some anonymous groups, I would just say specifically, if your mission is not able to be carried out in the context of the mission of the school, then it is the right thing to find the right place to live out that mission, if that makes sense, because then the school's mission is better carried out and your mission is better carried out. Or oftentimes, we may find, like in a company, in a business, somebody's mission is not able to be carried out where they are. It may be simply a matter of changing their position to a different position, you see. So it does not necessarily mean a departure, but this is the task of a leader, to help the people whom you lead to be able to discover and fulfill their mission in whatever roles, to the degree that that's possible within that organization. And if it is not possible, to then facilitate you finding a place to be your mission, because that is the task of a leader, whether or not any particular person that I lead continues in my group or not. My task as a leader is to help you achieve greatness, wherever that is. And so, you must discover your mission. And I've talked a lot at you up till now, and I want that to change now, to be more of a dialogue. But before simply just, pulling things from you and to engage, I want to actually take some time for each of you, again, as tables, however, since we've lost some numbers, to maybe coalesce even into two groups, I don't know, however makes sense for you, to converse with one another about what I'm actually going to move back here, to these things. Share with one another what some of these things are. You may not have a way of articulating your mission, but you may speak of, you have some sense of it. I know you do. I can see most of you have some sense of what your mission is. But to be able to speak about that with your colleagues, and provide, most importantly, be able to provide some of that feedback about saying positively to a colleague of yours, hey, so you know, I think when you do this kind of thing, this is when you are most alive. I think this is a real talent of yours. And being able to identify that for each other, because that's a great gift that you have for one another as colleagues. So maybe take 5 minutes and spend some time discussing with this. And by all means, grab another coffee or something like that. And I'm open for questions too the whole time. Yeah.
Yes, and I will add an assignment to that group, because you just touched, of course, on one of the key reasons
Yes.
And
Good.
that, I think, is the most challenging part for every one of us. I mean, for me, it's not so challenging because I founded the school, so I think that, for me, it's clear. But for everybody else,
Yeah.
that is the biggest challenge
Yeah.
that everybody is faced with, and that is when I know my personal mission in life, am I sure that I can and want to reconcile that with the mission of this organization, with the mission of the school?
Yeah.
And how do I do that? And can I do that? And do I want to do that? And do I want to make the sacrifices
Mm-hmm.
that come with that? And I think that's, I ask my colleagues to take that into consideration into their group discussion.
Yeah. And I don't know if I mean, if I can give a very specific, honest, just example of this, is there was a high school that I worked with where there were a number of teachers, tended to be on the younger side, newer teachers, within a few years, that they really were enthusiastic about the mission of the school. It was a classical Catholic school, much like this. They're enthusiastic about this. I love this. This is the greatest place to work. And their reason for being there tended to be this was the greatest place to work. It's better than the state school. Because I can do what I want to do here. It's fun. We can explore the things, that are cited, the real deep things. And they're good. They're noble things. The primary motivation for being there was it's essentially a fun place to work for people who are, classical geeks, that kind of thing. But they were unaware of necessarily what their mission was. And to the degree that some of them were aware, became aware, there was a problem, there's a challenge. And they came to me as dean and said, okay, so here's the deal. I really love working here and I don't want to work anywhere else, but I don't believe my mission is to be doing what I'm doing. And, explore with some of them. Is that to be teaching something else instead of what you're teaching? Is that, do you need to pursue further education, something like this? Or in some cases, do you need to perhaps teach at a different school? That there was not a lack of others. There are other schools that were around. One of them went to go get a position in that school, was a better fit for a variety of reasons. And another teacher, another young woman, her challenge was this was just simply not her mission. She really loved teaching. She really was excited about the mission of the school, but it wasn't her mission to be a teacher. And that's fine, and that is good, and she goes on now, and I think she became a researcher doing something. But just by way of example, and of course, then there are other people that, the art teacher at this school is a very cool guy, but as art teachers are, right? And he had no sense of his mission, but he began to discover his mission, and it brought new life to the way that he was teaching. And he always was excited about teaching the art, but it was no longer for him, isn't this a fun place to live? Gosh, I'm so lucky working in this place. There's this sense of purpose now, which was great because in his personal life there were crises and things that were falling apart, and very tragic things in there. But there's a new purpose and dimension, intensiveness, if you will, to his life and his work. So discovering your mission can go both ways, but I think it's vital for that. Anyway, I don't want to delay you any longer, but yeah, yes, from the board.
I'd like to add something, because when we're speaking about the school, the big problem normally, what in my experience was always, is does the organization, which needs me as a servant in respect to my mission, express its mission well enough?
Yeah.
Because looking at the school today in Austria, there are so many different political, social, economical aspects to being a school.
Yes.
There's a big misunderstanding, a big confusion in understanding the mission, specific mission of the school I'm working with. In our case, I would say, do we express the mission of the school in the right way and well enough so that everybody can find also its own mission?
Yeah. Do you feel that the school currently needs to, or is open to refining what the mission is, or at least how it's expressed?
This is the question.
for
question.
that. That is the question at hand, yeah.
So it's an ongoing question
Yeah.
for everybody. In any kind of organization.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of being too weak in our own expression, but
Absolutely.
it's an ongoing and steady process. So it's, as I said, it's always a situation of exchange,
Yeah.
of giving and taking.
Between the school mission and the mission of the people.
It's not something stable, it's not something monolithic.
Yeah.
It's not monolithic.
Yeah.
Maybe
I agree.
in
Exactly.
conjunction with what Joseph says, add a very interesting example that can probably help in the group discussion. So we have twice a year, Tag of Natuur, an open day, where parents can come and visit the school.
Okay.
And last year, we had a whole family come whose kid is now in our school in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the parents and the grandparents of both sides came. So the whole family
Wow.
came. Because some members of the family were very skeptical about the school because they had always sent their children to the same school in the same city
Yeah.
for many years. It was sort of tradition, we always sent the children. But then through marriage, of course, other opinions came into the families.
Yeah.
The wife insisted, no, I really want to have a look at this school. So they came to school to the open day, and they checked the school. And then at the end of the day, as the open day was over, the family walked outside, and the grandmother, who is from Slovakia and who had been a diplomat, stopped the rest of her family and said, "This school is going to be one of the last places where real Europeans are being formed." And I still remember that story. It doesn't solve, as Joseph correctly says, it doesn't solve, the continuous process we're going through of further refining the
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I'm calling this example, because it shows how vitally important a clarity of mission is.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly, here is an instance that somebody saw some clarity. Not everybody has that clarity. But
Yeah.
that if we provide such clarity in mission, it speaks to people.
Yes.
And that is the reason why it is so important that we discuss this striving for all of us to seriously discern what is our mission in life and how does that mission coincide and actually can serve the mission of this organization I'm a part of, and you said that so well. Or what do I need to do concretely, taking responsibility,
Yes.
taking the steps. What steps do I need to take that my personal mission comes in line to serve the mission of this organization, if that is possible?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wanted
Good.
to add that to the general discussion.
So, discuss. We have
Yes.
a few minutes here, so. Okay, so we begin. Yeah, hold on. Okay, now we can begin. Stay awake. All right, it's good. So, I want to hear from you something like I love. How did the conversation go? What are your thoughts in terms of personal mission, and especially I think in light of the question of refining the expression of organization of the mission of the school, and how does this fit in? I just want to hear from you your conversation, and I want to okay, here's what we will be doing here. I want to hear some feedback from that and the things that you talked about. Would be very interesting for me, and I think also helpful across the great chasm here of the middle. But also, then what we will do is move into a session, if you will, where I want to engage more in a very practical, tactical conversation. So not with the slides here, but we can certainly refer to things, but I want to hear from you what are questions or comments or thoughts about the application within the school, or if there's specific circumstances or challenges or opportunities that are in the school with particular students or with, in general, a class or something, things that you've observed and how this might be applied, and have that kind of conversation, because those are very specific things that I can't speak generally to, but with specific topics, if you bring something, then we can sort of examine it and address it in those particulars as well. So that's what we will be doing then, and then we will have the final sort of closing at that. Just so you know, the cursus is here for the rest of the, hour or so here that we have. So I want to hear first from you, what is the fruit of your discussion? What are some of the things that you observed, or perhaps have an articulation of the implications around personal mission, perhaps specific to that, and or the relation to the school's mission, based on the questions that were raised just before we went to break there. Anything? Yeah.
Break the ice and start.
Yeah.
For me, it's like that. It's very important. Also, like Christian said, this thing of our cultural heritage, the school that will be last, or one of the last schools forming real Europeans. This was a thing that in my forming of my own personality is one of the key things that I started from being non-Catholic, non-believing, relativistic, and so on. And it was a struggle for years that had then the point when I came to inner conversion, and also just before also the touch with cultural heritage and this thing, this universe, and this was important and precious for me, but I didn't have the whole connection of everything holding together. It was like bits of everywhere, much of illogicism inside. My thinking of the world was very illogical. I took from one side for argumenting in one direction, and then from the other, and so on. It was chaos. And so with a friend of mine that was from the beginning Catholic, he brought me with analysis and discussions about several topics to put in question my way of thinking, and then I reached a point where I found my belief, my fides, this point. Yeah. And so this was my moment of revolution, yes, of finding this fundament, to build, to stay upon, not this way of waters or sand where we go like this.
Yeah.
This has no sense, no meaning, no direction in life. And so for me, then I realized this was the thing where what I want to fight. And in the beginning, I didn't know so well in which direction concretely, but then I soon was brought to the point of giving lessons, Italian language, and so I discovered that this is the thing that is like a little bit of talent way of going, and so all these things came together, and then a friend of mine brought me to this school, and so I got in, and now I'm part of it. I'm very happy. It's a great place to be here, and so this is also, I think, it's like God that is leading us to our points, to our points in life, where to be, where to act, to work, to make our life fruitful. the
Yeah,
others.
to bear fruit and so on. Yeah, yeah,
Everyone.
yeah.
Yes, and that's it.
Good. Good. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's good. And how, if I can push the question, how do you see that that relates to the mission of this school in a particular way, sort of going on in terms of both sort of how your mission, as it's come together, gives to the school, but also then how that, and it sounds like there's perhaps a lot there that the school's mission also is giving as a teacher, not only to the students but to the teachers, to yourself.
Yes,
You feel this is?
it's my fundament where I'm standing.
Yeah.
It's, what I want to do is to help in this restoring of
Mhm.
this civilization of the faith.
Yeah.
The thing to, and this is a mean to get to Christ,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm.
I think we want to create here a civilization, and this is not enough. It's not a direction to go for its alone. It's
Yeah.
all of that has the goal to lead us to Christ and
Yeah.
to fulfill our life.
Yeah.
We're not like animals that live here and we are happy with this living, and then when we are dead, it's gone, and this is okay. So we are all projected to a more brighter living, the Unendlichkeit, the infinity,
Yeah.
and this is with God.
Yes.
And so, and only with that we can be happy. We can be whole, heilig. So
Yeah.
again,
Having a holy whole. Yeah. Yeah. This is good. This is good. What else? What you had a lot. You were saying over here, even after he began talking. That's okay. But like, what were you discussing, if I may ask? Like how? What is your experience? What do you feel or say about your personal mission and the school's mission, and how of this do you have to contribute to? I mean, I think I forget the name, Joseph. Yeah, the question that he posed about the evolving thing. I believe that there was something to this. So, please speak.
I think I would give the word to Bernhard, because you had a good point. You said there was some event in life that, for instance, is kind of a key element for your thinking, for your future path. So maybe you can just repeat that, because yeah, no. Okay, thank you. The most important things comes now from him.
I visited a reading 3 years ago about ethics and sports.
Okay.
That was, for the most part, the thing that influenced me very much. The reading was about moral and how to treat others and what you can expect from others, and also how you have to behave to can expect such things in return. And yeah, for the most part, that was the key element, as Stefan said, that brought me to this school here, because I think ethics and moral has a big part in this school, and that's why I enjoy being here, and I hope I can contribute to the.
I'd like to shift now to a very practical discussion, but again, as I said, this is not something that I can say specifically to you so much as we must have in a dialogue. I don't know the inner workings of your school and what you see and what you know, but you do. I don't know this. And so I want to ask you, And I don't know where to begin, but it might be like this. What do you think could be done in the school to implement this? This is all beautiful, this thing, this is wonderful, the virtues is wonderful, it's great, Aristotle, it's wonderful. But what practically, within the life of the school, you know the needs of your students, you know them personally. I have never met, save 2 or 3 of them, and that but briefly, as we walk past each other. What are the ways, or what is a way in which you think that something like this could be applied in the school? Something that could be done or put into place that would make virtue easier for the students to develop, or that could be done more intentionally, if you will, to cultivate them. I want to hear from you because you know the specifics and the specific needs of the students.
To make it easier,
Yes, perhaps.
go down the line.
Yeah, just go like this. This is good, okay. Yeah, and then we take some things?
We asked to say something.
Okay, thank you. This sounds good. Go. Yeah. Next, please. We skip and come back.
Die Frage ist ganz konkret. Die Frage ist ganz konkret. Wir haben heute die wunderschöne Theorie über Virtuous Leadership gehört. Wir haben gesprochen über Tugenden, über unsere persönliche Entwicklung, über unsere persönliche Mission, was ist unseren Auftrag. Wir haben gesprochen über die Mission der Schule und wie wir das vereinen können mit unserer persönlichen Mission. Also wir haben sozusagen das Grundgerüst überkommen, darüber gelernt, auch durch das Buch, das ich gelesen habe, wie wir selber ein tugendhaftes Leben aufbauen können, wie wir selber tugendhafte Führung übernehmen können, wie wir das dann übermitteln an den Schülern. Und jetzt ist die konkrete Frage an uns, von Dr. Thompson. Ganz konkret, das ist alles sehr schön, was wir da gehört haben, aber wie setzen wir das ganz konkret in der Praxis um? Und da möchten wir gerne, dass jeder von euch sich darüber kurz Gedanken macht. Einfach ein Beispiel oder ein Gedanke oder eine Idee oder ein Vorschlag, wie man das, was wir hier heute gehört und gelernt haben, im Schulalltag, im Klassenzimmer, im Umgang miteinander als Lehrer ganz konkret umsetzen kann. Das ist die Frage. Ganz praktische Beispiele. Und da ist meine Bitte, dass jeder von euch sich da etwas überlegt, damit wir wirklich alle persönlich hier einsteigen. Nicht die anderen reden lassen, aber selber.
Okay.
I think as a teacher, we have to live the virtue in front of the children and show them every day this virtue. To show them. When we do this, they also have to, or should, as an inspiration.
That's right.
Ich denke, wir könnten das auf Deutsch sagen, weil man sich vielleicht besser aufbaut.
Ja, wir können es auch auf Deutsch.
Ja, ich habe das akustische Bild verstanden.
Ja, ich habe gesagt, wir sollten das den ganzen Tag
Ich stelle mich jetzt hier neben Dr. Thompson
ja.
und ich übersetze, wo
Ja.
notwendig. Ja? Also wir gehen einfach die Reihe rum, das macht es ein bisschen lebendiger.
Ja, mein Gedanke war, dass wir eben die Tugend immer vorleben, immer zeigen, den ganzen Tag den Schülern, eben, dass wir das machen und dann als Inspiration, dass sie das dann auch tun sollen.
So, Professor Sachs says that the most important he finds is that the specific virtue, we visibly live it for the students to see it, and that can be an inspiration for them by seeing the teacher actually living that specific virtue. So not generally, but a specific virtue.
Aber kannst du da ein Beispiel bringen, Christian?
Example.
Ja, vergeben. Zum Beispiel.
Yeah? Forgiveness.
Ah,
Ja, dass man es auch vor den Schülern vorzeigt. Dass man selber vergibt. Oder halt. Ja, genau. Dass man auch mal sagt, der Lehrer entschuldigt, er hat den Fehler gemacht, das tut mir leid.
sondern bring ein konkretes Beispiel.
Ja. Wenn die Schüler sehen, dass ich als Lehrer mich auch einmal entschuldige, ja, dann hinterfragen, dann denken sie, okay, sogar der Lehrer macht das, müssen wir ja auch, ne? Wir sind ja auch nicht perfekt. Also, wenn ich
So
jetzt
the discussion is that I, as a teacher, learn to forgive and also ask for forgiveness. So that if I, as a teacher, have made an error, that I have the capability in front of the pupils to say, I am sorry, I made a mistake. And
This
that is
is-
an inspiration. That is a concrete example.
this is a great, I think this is
A great example.
great example, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question, and that is what, in your estimation, stands in the way of that presently? What challenges are there in doing this? Because this is real life too, right? So I think it's a great concrete example, but what would you find, or do you think, and this anybody could contribute, is inhibiting that? I don't know how you say, but
Gibt es etwas jetzt in unserem täglichen Schulleben, dass das im Wege steht, das zu tun? Nein. Das ist ein gutes Beispiel. Ja.
although, yeah.
Okay. The most important thing was, I think, that the personal mission and the mission of the organization, that means our school, should be the same. I think that as teacher, we should explain that the mission of the school is also the mission of each pupil. So when I teach, I think you can do the practicality of explain, okay, you're not here to only do homeworks and to learn and to do all the things that I say. So it's your mission as well. It's you that it's a pupil that can learn something, and the mission of that I should teach them French, for example, is also the mission of the pupil. So that we come together and we are in one boat. So I think that's the school. The mission of the school is the mission of the teachers, and should also be the mission of the pupils. That we are all together in one direction. I think that is a force that we should try to explain and to make clear to all pupils and also the parents. Not also the pupils, also the parents. I think that's the most important thing of this day. That the mission of the organization and the mission of each should be the same.
And if you permit me perhaps to refine that a little bit, there's a way in which, yes, I think so. You're absolutely right in that we have to all be about this same mission, right? The mission of the school. I think, though, it's important to, in order to be able to do that authentically, at least the faculty and staff, and because students are kids, but hopefully they grow to develop this as well through the way that you're describing, to begin to understand each our own missions. In order to contribute to the mission of the school. So I think maybe that's, and that might be just a translation thing, but that each of our missions should contribute to, but not be necessarily identical to, at the personal level, the mission of the school.
So everybody should, for example, learn French, but everyone has its own way to do this.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's because our school is also school for individuals, I think. So it's also the mission.
Mm-hmm.
We have one way to go, but there are different ways that everyone can choose, but the same direction that would be important. I think it's the same.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's, yeah.
Ich möchte das auf Deutsch sagen, weil ich da differenzierter ausdrücken kann. Mir ist das jetzt gerade gekommen, das ist zwar jetzt eine harte Sache, aber ich sage es trotzdem. Ich halte das auch für den Key Point hier, also die eigene Vision, die Mission der Schule, die Übereinstimmung, die Richtung. Und ich denke, es wäre eine gute Übung, dass jeder Lehrer sich mal hinsetzt, sich die Mission der Schule, alles was wir haben, wir haben ein fantastisches Erziehungskonzept, wir haben ein fantastisches Schulphilosophie, wir haben einen fantastischen Lehrplan, dass man sich mal hinsetzt, das durchdenkt und weil die Schwierigkeit ist immer die Interpretation dessen. Ja? Also alle, die wir hier sitzen, meinen, dass wir die Schulphilosophie verstanden haben und auch umsetzen. Und ob das der Fall ist, dafür braucht man einen anderen. Das heißt, es könnte sich jeder von uns mal hinsetzen, das wirklich durchdenken und dann dem Herrn Direktor irgendwie sagen oder irgendjemand anderen vom Vorstand, wie ich die Schule wirklich sehe und wie ich sie umsetze. Also wie ich das Mission Shaping wirklich verstanden habe. Ja?
So,
das wäre mein Vorschlag.
So,
ja? Weil auf diese Art und Weise wird es nämlich extrem konkret. Ja? Wo ich kann da nur ein Beispiel sagen aus dem Literaturunterricht. Es ist wahnsinnig wichtig, wenn ich etwas analysiere, dass ich mich vergewissere, dass wir wirklich alle das Gleiche verstanden haben. Ja? Und das mache ich dann auch, wenn wir analytisch wirklich in eine ganz differenzierte Frage kommen, sodass es wirklich wichtig ist, dass alle verstanden haben, was diese Stelle jetzt wirklich bedeutet. Ja? Und da lasse ich das jeden Einzelnen wiederholen. Und da sehe ich dann, was sie verstanden haben und was sie nicht verstanden haben. Ja?
So, Christine Wiesmann says that to very concretely deal with this, so to say, bringing the personal mission to the mission of the organization and integrating those, it is in a very concrete exercise would be that all of the teachers take the various documents that the school has produced, you know, our pedagogical concept and our character development document, you know, we have a lot of documents and our curriculum, and that they once again all go through it from A to Z, really let it work into them and ask themselves the question, have I really understood where this is about? And if not, I asked, so to say, the leadership of the school, have I understood this correctly? And she makes a comparison to literature, which she teaches, where she works with the students always when reading and interpreting a text.
Yes.
Of course, every reader looks at it through his or her own eyes.
Yeah.
So it's very important to find out, okay, what do you understand under this text? And what do you understand? What do you understand? And to bring a unity there, that there is a correct understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Yeah, I think that'd be vital.
Yes.
Ja.
Ja.
So wie ich das jetzt verstanden habe, heißt ja auch, Leader zu sein, andere dazu befähigen, das Beste aus sich herauszuholen.
Yeah, to be leader means to enable others to rise to the occasion.
Yes.
To become great leaders.
Und ich denke, dazu ist es notwendig, dass man den Kindern auch ein gewisses Maß an Verantwortung überlässt und auch Vertrauen darin hat, dass die Kinder, was auch immer sie jetzt aufbekommen haben, welche Verantwortung sie bekommen haben, dass sie das gut ausführen werden und einfach Vertrauen in die Kinder und sie auch in ihrem eigenen Glauben zu bestärken.
So what is important there, he says, is that we give confidence, we trust to the children that they will be capable of growing in that, to bring out that in themselves.
Yes.
We need to first allow them to take responsibility for that, and then have the confidence, the trust that they will do that.
Yes.
And
This is.
Versuch ist so gut.
Yeah, this is supreme importance. I mean, thank you for recalling me to a very practical but fundamental pedagogical point with the children, with young people, is that they will always rise to the level of our expectations or fall to the level of our expectations, right? If we expect very little of them, whether that means we don't have, we are pessimistic or we are too protective, they will not rise very far, right? We need to, like you said, make this space and say, okay, here's high expectations and I trust in you to be able to do this, knowing that they will fall short, but being able then to help guide them in that. I think that is absolutely key to the success of forming the students.
And I think you say a very important thing there. They will only rise to the expectation that we give them. If our expectation is low, they will rise to the low expectation.
Yeah.
If the expectation is high, they will rise to the high expectation if we guide them and lead them in that.
Yeah.
And that's why what you say is so important, that we let them take responsibility and that we give them confidence, trust that they can do it.
Yeah, giving them, so that's some very practical things, and is to have for each student something for which they're responsible, that they alone are responsible for to do. This is your task, your job, and that they know that you're relying on them to do it. Even in the small ways, you don't have very, very little children, but even in like kindergarten or something, this kid is responsible for picking up the blocks, and this kid is responsible for organizing the bookshelf or something like that. As an example, I think, at the higher levels, you can take on really great responsibilities.
I have one example, may I immediately
Yeah.
add to it, and I think you will all remember it. The moment last year when we gave Clemens Reinbrecht the task of being the Ministrantenführer, he started walking differently.
Is that,
He
yes.
started walking different, and ever since our Ministranten has been perfectly organized, and he really takes that responsibility, and he's proud of it, and he rose to the
Yes.
occasion. We set a high standard for him. He rose to the occasion.
That is exactly, yes.
So he's responsible in the school for the acolytes
Yeah,
during the weekly
okay,
masses.
sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so he organizes all the boys in the school to serve mass, and he prepares them. And he's a boy of the 7th grade, and he takes it very seriously.
Good. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing. Yeah. Yes.
I think that's also a point I wanted to make, that the children are also leaders inside the class. And what are we doing if they are not following this mission? They are leading the class in a different direction. What are we doing? First point. The second point is, I think to grow, you have to make small steps. And one has to be, as teachers, to be clear what those steps have to be, and somehow also what happens if it's not done. So we want them to greet us in the morning, and it doesn't work. And I feel we are not concrete enough for us teachers that we say what should happen if they don't do it. Everybody tries to lead, but we lead in 12 different directions a little bit. We have the same aim, but we are probably not doing. It's not working actually. So
You're right.
The 30 years in a row doing it, and it doesn't work. So
Okay.
You have to do rules, but say
we have to.
different ways they don't work. Yeah?
What can we do? What can we do? That's so. If we, I think we are trying to make them great Christian leaders. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can't start.
You can get them to say hello to you in the morning. Yeah.
So we aim here, but we fail here. Yeah. So that's a challenge.
Perhaps you can explain a little bit the context.
The context is one of, so we work a lot on character development, and also we see that we have to train the children in very basic
Grace and courtesy kind of.
courtesy.
Yeah.
And one of them is that we again and again, and in every different way possible, really try to train the children that they greet us as teachers and any grown-up that is in the school. When they see them on the hallway, when they see them in the bus or entering the building, that you say Grüß Gott, or good afternoon, or good morning. And we struggle with that, because some children do it and some don't, and there are periods that they do better and there are other periods that they do worse. But at the bottom line is there's no consistency in that. And so the question of Florian is talking about leadership. What can we do there, to lead them in that?
Yeah. Do you and you have addressed this question before, or I mean, to say specifically, but there's just lack of consistency on the part of.
Well, we've addressed the question many times amongst ourselves, in teachers' meetings, and we always remind our colleagues that they have to insist upon it.
Yes.
But it seems that we still haven't found a way in leading as professors. We haven't found a way as a body of teachers to lead the children into making that a habit.
A habit, yeah. May I offer
Yes,
something?
that's why we're
I think,
asking you.
but because I mean, I know maybe you've tried this. I don't know, but maybe try again, or whatever. Because something that I've seen work in the past on this specific, very specific, the same topic, is, and I don't know how you start the day, perhaps, but I assume in the in the aula somewhere, yeah. And then they go to the classrooms, yeah. And so they have the goal is right that the students will greet you whenever they pass you in the hallway, yes. Right? So we start with just at least once a day, right? At the key point, they're not. They come into the classroom. If you stand at the beginning, at the doorway of the classroom, and they greet you, I don't know, you do greet and shake hand or whatever is appropriate, just a greeting. If they do not greet you, they do not get into the classroom. And it's a very easy, because the most common reason why we often fall apart in consistency is we forget, right? I've got a million other things I need to focus on. And if I'm passing down the hallway and a student doesn't greet me, I am not going to stop and insist that they greet me because I'm busy trying to do something else, right? This is why we forget to do we don't do all sorts of things we know we should do because we simply find ourselves too busy. But at the very beginning of the day is always the same, right? It's like you always have a beginning of a day. The kids always have to come into the classroom at some point. And so you stand there. If you remember then at the beginning, this is what I do. This is part of the opening routine. Is after prayer, I'm standing at the doorway to the classroom, and the student says, comes and greets you in the morning. Says, Grüß Gott, or whatever they say, and you respond back to them, and they come in. If they don't do it, they try and sneak by. No. You grab the collar and you stay out here.
I like the idea, but
because it's one thing, and then
it requires a new discipline from the teachers, namely to be on time.
Well, everything we do is impact everything else.
This is the main point, the discipline of the teachers, because we are as a teacher body.
Yeah.
We don't have, we all know our principles and our rules, and each teacher has a different way to deal with this.
Yeah.
There are teachers who say you have to read, you have to do this, and there are others who don't.
And that's
yeah. This is amazing. Yeah? Because if the children get the whole information from each teacher, then it will work. But if there are teachers saying, with this person I have
this Freiheit, yeah.
Or with this person we have to do this and this and this, and with this person we have to do this and this and this. And so we have, with all our principles, we are different levels.
Yeah. No, that can't be. Yeah, that doesn't, because that's exactly what you're seeing the reflection of then in the students, right? Yeah.
This is from my point of view.
But
It's good work.
I think it's we don't have to decide that now. We'll speak about this further. But I think the idea you give here, it's a completely new idea. I've never thought of it, but the idea in itself is good. If we could make the habit that the first hour of the day immediately after morning prayer, that we as teachers just make it our commitment that each teacher stands at the door of his or her classroom. Let's see what happens then. Really? No, prayer. So we could make. So we could make.
We can pray.
No, of course.
We
organize it. Let's not go into detail now, but we can speak. But one could organize that but I think let's not go into the practical details too much because that's for another time. But I think what you're saying here, the central thought of that, is a good thought.
Okay.
And I think that's something we can work with.
And I think it's true, like what you said, that there's other things that need to be in place then for that to happen. It has a web of other implications, and I think that itself is worth then exploring what those are, what needs, if this is like a domino, I don't know how you call these things, but a domino, this is knocked down. Okay, well if this is here, we need to move backwards to what else do we need to have in place, and I think that's the direction, I think, of a great faculty discussion and determining sort of disciplinary policies and all of this, and some modifications and how, if we're not being consistent, or if it's this or anything else, but to look back and say, okay, well, this isn't working, We all know it's not working. Why is it not working? Is there something, what needs to be in place for that? And if that's not possible to be in place, well then, okay, what do we need to do prior to that for then that to work? Does this make sense? You kind of trace up the chain, 3 or 4 times to ask, okay, well, why isn't this working? And then maybe we can come to, you can come to something that then has a ripple effect. And all you find once this is in place, everything else kind of just falls into where it should be. If that makes sense, yeah. So that's what I would say for that.
Es gibt noch einige Wortmeldungen, die fehlen. Bitte.
Yeah.
I'd like to get back to the concept of responsibility,
Uh-huh.
which I think is extremely important in teaching and also in raising children.
Mm-hmm.
Children are adults now, so responsibility was always a key issue.
Yeah.
Because it makes the person strong and involved.
Yeah.
I always try to tell the students that, hey, you are also responsible for what's happening in school.
Yeah.
Not only the teachers. We
Mhm.
have different roles, but different responsibilities. But you are responsible for how you learn, what you learn, how you do in school,
Yeah.
what school means to you. And it's also connected to talent and mission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way of finding out about your talents. And if you confer responsibility to children, then they have to utilize their talents.
Yeah.
And then they also find their mission.
Yeah.
So we're all trying hard to be talent scouts and discover our students' talents
Mm-hmm.
so that they will find their mission.
Yeah.
Get them more involved.
Right. Because then they've taken responsibility for something new that they might not otherwise have done, but discover perhaps that they either absolutely dislike it or that it's something that, wow, this is, they come alive. Yeah, I think that's eminently true.
And what Susan and I find as a really big challenge is like the everyday life of teaching. Well, we have to, we have a state curriculum and
Yeah.
a state finance,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much bureaucracy, not in our school, but
Yeah.
in school.
So you have to answer to.
So this is a really big challenge to
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for all these practical things, but at the same time focusing on our mission, which is pretty much the way it's just
Yeah.
the state curriculum.
Yeah. That is the challenge of the world we find ourselves in.
Ja, die große Herausforderung ist einfach, dass wir so dieses Bürokratische, was von der Schulorganisation, also nicht von der Schule, sondern Bildungsdirektion etc. vorgegeben wird, die Zentralhierarchie oder der Lehrplan, so dass es eben belastet dass wir
Ja gut, das ist der Spagat zwischen unserem Programm und dem Matura-Modus.
Ja, weil es nicht nur um den Spagat zwischen unserer Schule und dem allgemeinen Curriculum geht, sondern es geht darum, unsere Nischen in den Schulalltag zu integrieren. Die konkrete 1 Stunde oder 2 Stunden, die ich in der Klasse habe. Und das ist so wahnsinnig wenig Zeit und so viel momentan, was wir zu berücksichtigen haben, das zu realisieren, einfach neben der Vorbereitung jetzt auf die Matura, die so viele von uns schon belastet. Einfach noch im Prinzip verstehe ich das als das Extension of our School Concept.
Mm.
Ja?
Ja.
Right? So, und das kennen wir schon sehr lange, aber das umzusetzen ist das große Problem.
Professor Virtuous says that her challenge is, the challenge that she sees is that there's so much that one has to do as a teacher in an hour of teaching.
Yeah.
There's so much that has to go in there.
Yeah.
And this is also very important, but how does one get it all in there? And then on top of that, there's the pressure of the Matura. So how can we do that?
Yeah.
So
I think that's the crux of the problem. Is there's never, I mean, even in determining what the curriculum is, right? That's the key problem. Is there's not room to add anything else. Right? This is just being a teacher, right? And then you always fall behind too, anyway. So I think the key insight in implementing this kind of formation for the students is is in the, I mean, not in the curriculum per se, in the sense of being taught in the classroom. There's spaces where that fits in because there's intersection, but in the way in which we can structure the life of the school. And so, rather than adding something more, doing what we do in a different way, perhaps the difference is merely in a concerted way, in a new symphonic kind of way. The structure, if you permit, the sort of like the scaffolding around the classroom as an analogy that allows for more space, perhaps even in the day in terms of time. I think a great way to do that is to rely on is to organize things such that we can facilitate the students themselves playing a role in the formation of each other. Not because they have the intention of forming one another, but because as a leader in the school, I can create this environment for the students to have this kind of impact on each other through cultivating the social environment, the social structures in place whereby they can do this. And a small example of this phenomenon is this student who was in charge of the servers, the acolytes, right? And all of a sudden he did this, and he's organizing them, and like you said, now he's taken ownership of it, and this is organized. That same principle then applied to different aspects of the school life. And at a certain point, and this is, this is what I'm going to say is for a much later, larger discussion, but looking at perhaps dividing the student body into subgroups, if it's not already, I don't know, but houses, if you will, to provide organizational units for the students at the upperclassmen. I don't know if this is the concept. Yeah, that they can take responsibility then for the lower class, for the younger students. And one of the, it's almost like magic when you have these kinds of groups. It's not just within the group, the house, we'll say the word house, within the house, but that the houses then in some ways can compete in a healthy competition sort of way, which can draw the students out. Because they know if I'm competing with this house for, if my house is competing with this house for some sort of thing, and it's not merely reward seeking, but okay, we're better at this, or you're better at that, or maybe, I think the great ways that it plays out is on the sports field, where they're playing sports, you maybe have you utilize this in some way. There's various ways that this can be applied, but the principle is that the houses then almost become competitions for virtue, where they're outdoing one another in honor, for lack of a better term, where they're striving with one another to raise the bar. And where we've done that in schools, that has had phenomenal, extraordinary effects. Yeah.
And I think also, Professor Blücher, I think this is that there's no misunderstanding about what this concept that Cameron has been talking to us about is rightly understood. This is not about what we should be doing in the sense of what we should be putting in our curriculum. This is about who will we be? Yeah. And who will we be? And Professor Sachs has actually said it very well. It was an excellent contribution. This is very simple. Who will we be is how do I as a teacher live in front of my students so that they may be inspired by who I am. And who I am defines itself in how I react, how I respond, how I speak, how I teach. It's not about, this is not some sort of curriculum that we're going to write down and distribute. This is about who we should be, so how we should be working on ourselves as teachers daily, how we should battle with ourselves in working on our own character development, so that students can be inspired by us, not because we're perfect, because we're not, but because we are sinners, because we are imperfect, but they see that we are working and that we are trying and that we're inspiring through the example we live. That's the point.
Yes,
right?
Yeah,
Am I right?
exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
You're talking about it, but the point is to change, also wenn ich das jetzt für mich selber anwenden soll, brauche ich auch Zeit, brauche ich Stille, brauche ich Ruhe, irgendwie um das umzusetzen, für mich persönlich. Und wenn wir schon so, das ist einfach, also jetzt mit Matura und mit all dem, was wir schon umsetzen sollen, noch mich hinzusetzen und überlegen, was bedeutet das jetzt für mich? Auch das braucht wieder irgendwann mal eine gewisse Vorbereitungszeit. Und das ist dann auch, ich meine jetzt nicht, dass wir das alles in den Unterricht stopfen müssen, aber was wir für den Unterricht brauchen, ist schon sehr viel, weil hier in der österreichischen Bildungskultur schon so viel drin ist.
Ich verstehe, was Sie sagen, aber nochmal, ich denke, da ist doch echt ein Missverständnis, weil das, worüber wir hier sprechen, ist das Wesentliche des überhaupt Lehrerseins. Das ist das Wesentlichste. Und das ist so, müsste so natürlich für uns sein, und das ist es auch für uns. Das müsste so etwas sein wie unser tägliches Gebet. Ja? Das muss nicht etwas sein, was wir sehen, das uns auferlegt wird. Aber das, aber das sollte eine Priorität haben, und die Priorität ist größer dann als jede andere Sache. Es gibt nichts Wichtigeres als das für uns Lehrer. Wirklich nichts Wichtigeres, weil wenn das nicht unsere Priorität ist, dann können wir auch unsere Schülerinnen und Schüler nicht führen, nicht inspirieren, wenn das für uns nicht eine Priorität ist. Und da darf eine Matura, so schwierig das auch ist, ja, und so herausfordernd ist, darf da nicht im Weg stehen. Ich verstehe die Sorge, ja, keine Missverständnis nicht, aber da müssen wir unsere Prioritäten richtig setzen. Sorry, I was just explaining, because this is a very, very interesting contribution Professor Löscher has made here, because she understandably says we're struggling with all these demands that come to us. Yeah?
Yeah.
And how do I fit this in? Because this is something I need to work on, I need to reflect on, I need to give time on. To which my answer may be a little bit too strict, but I'm speaking from the heart here, is well, but this should be our priority.
Yeah.
Because this is the source from which it all starts. And I know we all realize that, there's no question about it, but the whole idea of this seminar is that we realize that more.
I just wanted to add, so there are 2 points. Of course, a priority, as we are all Christians, is that we have to lead, that we have to be good people and all these things, but we don't have to forget that we are a school. There are 2 things, but for us, it's more important to look into the people and to search all the good things, but we don't forget that wir haben auch die Schulpflicht.
Ja, wir
haben nur eine unterschiedliche Priorität. Wir sehen das anders. Aber natürlich dürfen wir uns nicht vergessen, auch wenn man Matura ist das Thema und so, wir haben auch die Schulpflicht, aber wir sehen das vielleicht ein bisschen großflächiger. Das heißt, bei uns sind ja auch sehr viele Schüler, die vielleicht in anderen Schulen schon Probleme hatten, wo es einfach sehr strukturiert zugeht, und bei uns können sich hier ein bisschen entwickeln. Das heißt ja nicht, dass wir jetzt auf die Schulpflicht verzichten, aber nur das vielleicht so in der Ausdruck.
So what Professor Lensweger is saying is she's trying to explain a little bit more what Professor Bush is saying, is that of course we're dealing here on the one hand we have to say the professional responsibility.
Yeah.
As a school.
Yes.
Because that's also
yes.
To give a professional education, to
Absolutely.
make sure that all the standards are being met,
Mm-hmm.
and that we have to weigh, although weigh is not the right word, but we have to weigh that with what we want to achieve as a school more, because this is what we said at the beginning of the day. I said that in response to one of the slides, and that is that if our goal is just to bring them successfully to the Matura, then we have failed.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and Joseph and I, we were just also talking about that. Because what we want to give to the students is much more than that.
Yeah.
The Matura is a part of that, much more of that. So all this is about the challenge, and I understand you, Professor Blucher. This is about the challenge of weighing that and giving everything its due time. That's the question. Yes.
If I may, I think this is okay. This is good. This is good because you're right. Now I'm seeing, what and this is a concern not unique, right? You're not the first school. We have this in the school I used to work for and others. Though the state structures look different, the problem is the same. The challenge is the same. And so what I'm hearing is that there's still only 24 hours in a day, and you have And you have to eat in there too somewhere, and maybe sleep a little bit, yeah. And perhaps one of the things I would propose is a lot of things seem to be coming back, and partially from the conversation and partially from my own experiences and what I've seen in other schools as well, is that the conversation tends to come to a point that we need, and I will speak in persona facultatis, in the person of the teachers or something, that we need something from the school in terms of, if this is a priority, I'm feeling, maybe I will just verbalize, if this is a priority for us, I'm feeling that there's this extra demand, and I know that it's supposed to all be done because theoretically there's a way that it fits, but I feel this anxiety and this pressure to put it all in, which means we're not doing any of it well, or at least I feel like I'm not doing any of it well in the classroom. And perhaps a proposal is that if this is really a priority for the school, which it is, of course, that somehow, and it may not be feasible to do in this academic year, but some way in which there is a space created by this school, a framework where I still have to take the ownership of, I still have to take the initiative for my own personal development, but somehow a breathing room, a little bit of breathing room is made for me to be able to do the self-reflection and feel like there's space to examine, to experiment with how this can fit into the curriculum or how it changes the way that I do things in the classroom. Because I've been doing them a certain way for so many years, shifting that habit almost requires, I mean, as an artist, if you think of the teacher as an artist, it takes some space to sit back and reevaluate how I'm going to do this. And so maybe, I don't know what it would look like, but the question for a little bit of an opportunity of space to trial and to tinker, as it were.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So if that's...
Trotzdem noch was hinzufügen, was glaube ich jetzt in diese ganze Diskussion vielleicht zusammenfassen. Und damit wir uns um diese Prioritäten, dieses Leadership und um diese ganzen tollen Sachen kümmern können, brauchen wir ja trotzdem zuerst mal, muss das mit der Schule und mit der Schulpflicht auch mal funktionieren, weil wir können ja nicht irgendwie oben anfangen mit gutem Gesicht. Also ich glaube, das passt das jetzt irgendwie so zusammen. Natürlich ist das unsere höhere Priorität, aber das setzt natürlich voraus, dass die normale Schulpflicht, was viele andere Schulen vielleicht auch irgendwie machen, aber wir machen ja mehr, dass das schon funktioniert. Ich glaube, das ist irgendwie so die Zusammenfassung von dieser Diskussion, von der Problematik, die jetzt aufgetaucht ist.
Yeah, so what President Hennig is saying is that in order to be able to reach that goal, we have to make sure that the foundations, also so to say, the professional duty we have, that functions.
Yeah.
So that we can, work on that basis. However, I do see the danger there is that we focus so much on that we forget the higher goal, and then we become mediocre.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, ich spreche natürlich aus einer Erfahrung aus verschiedensten Organisationen, dazu gehört auch eine Schule. Wir sind in der wichtigen Situation, dass wir genau das tun müssen, was Sie gesagt haben, dabei aber nicht vergessen dürfen, dass dieser Überbau, den wir grundsätzlich als Idee dieser Schule haben, ja nicht sozusagen nur beschränkt ist auf Matura, reduziert ist, ja? Sondern dass dieser Überbau einfach sehr viel länger braucht, zu werden, was er werden soll. Das ist völlig richtig, dass Sie sagen, wir müssen das, was wir tun müssen, aufgrund der rechtlichen und der organisatorischen Situation an der Schule, müssen wir das wirklich gut tun.
So he's saying that we have to realize that the whole mission of the school is much more than the Matura. It's much more. We have built a bigger edifice, a bigger building, yeah? And that is much bigger than this Matura, but we have to realize that. We have to realize that.
Ist das Gesamtbild so gut zu sehen, dass jeder sagen kann, ich bin jetzt Lehrer oder Lehrerin in dieser Schule, um ein bestimmtes Ziel, professionelles Ziel zu erreichen, und erkenne ich dabei den gesamtkomplexen Bau dessen, was es sein soll. Und damit auch
Every
eine
teacher has to
Bedingung
ask himself the question, do I recognize what this final goal is and how we are there, getting there?
So, bin ich am richtigen Platz und nicht in erster Linie darum, wie kann ich die Schule, also nicht in erster Linie darum, wie kann ich das jetzt umsetzen.
Ja, es ist, also die Aufgabe umzusetzen ist, dass zuerst primär ist, den Gegenstand, den Sie führen, und die Schüler dorthin zu führen, wo es notwendig ist aufgrund der rechtlichen und der sozusagen didaktischen als professionellen Notwendigkeit. Und das aber im Kontext der Gesamtschulidee, des gesamten Projektes, das aber vielleicht für Sie noch nicht ganz genau zu erkennen ist. Aber die Frage ist, haben Sie die Hoffnung, respektive den Mut und das Vertrauen, dass es dorthin geht? Das ist ein längerfristiger Prozess.
So he's saying it's very important that yes, we have to focus on our duties, our professional duties, but that should always be in the framework of the larger goal.
Das Hauptanliegen ist, das musst du beantworten.
Entschuldigung, ich muss nur übersetzen.
Meine Frage, wenn ich es jetzt richtig verstanden habe, geht es jetzt heute nicht in erster Linie darum, die Ausführung des Schulkonzeptes, dass wir das möglichst rasch umsetzen, sondern es geht heute in erster Linie darum, habe ich meinen Platz hier.
Nein, darum geht es nicht hauptsächlich heute. Nein, es geht heute hauptsächlich um die Frage, wie können wir als einzelne Lehrerinnen und Lehrer daran arbeiten, dass wir dieses Leadership übernehmen durch unser Sein, durch wem wir sind, damit dadurch unsere Tätigkeit als Lehrer nicht nur das entspricht, was es sein muss aufgrund der Schulpflicht und so weiter, aber auch in der Richtung geht oder arbeitet, damit wir das Hauptziel dieser Schule, damit wir das erreichen. Stimmt das, Josef? Ja? Damit wir dieses Hauptziel, also Josef hat es sehr gut gesagt, im Kontext, also diese, nennen wir es mal, Schulpflicht, die wir zu erfüllen haben, die muss immer in der Kontext stehen, in das, was wir als Schule erreichen möchten. Und das ist, dass wir Menschen, junge Menschen heranbilden möchten, selbstständig denkende und in der Verantwortung, in der Gesellschaft Verantwortung übernehmende Menschen werden, die fähig dazu sind. Und das heißt, es ist, und denke ich, das ist so gut, dass das herauskommt in dieser Diskussion, ja, es ist zu wenig, wenn wir nur auf der Matura fokussieren. Es ist verständlich, weil das ist dieser Druck, der von außen kommt. Aber es ist zu wenig. Und was wir heute tun wollen, ist, dass wir und das ist genau das Ziel der Lehrerakademie, ist, dass wir genau euch helfen möchten, unterstützen möchten, durch unsere eigene persönliche Entwicklung, diesen Ziel, das die Schule sich gestellt hat, diesen hohen Ziel zu erreichen. Und das ist ein Weg, den wir gemeinsam gehen, diejenigen die von uns, die sich entschieden haben, diesen Weg zu gehen. Und da komme ich dann zurück, I'm sorry, that is so long.
Das ist okay.
Aber darum komme ich dann zurück, warum es so wichtig ist, was Cameron gesagt hat über persönliche Mission und Mission der Schule, und da haben wir schon mehrmals drüber gesprochen, ist, dass wir, wenn wir im Klaren sind, was unsere Mission im Leben ist, und wir können diese Mission integrieren in der Mission der Schule, dann überstehen wir auch alle Schwierigkeiten. Ich sage das anders, ich habe diese persönliche Erfahrung so stark in meinem Leben gemacht. Ich habe sehr lange gebraucht, bevor ich meine Mission im Leben gefunden habe. Ich habe es sehr spät gefunden. Ich war erst Anwalt, ja? Ich war ganz etwas anderes. Ich bin sehr spät sozusagen in der Bildung gelandet. Aber das ich daraus gelernt habe, ist dem Moment, dass das für mich klar war, was meine persönliche Mission war. Und dass ich diese Mission vereinen konnte mit der Mission der Organisation, die ich diene, sei es die Schule oder sei das hier die Hochschule, ist, dass, wenn es diese Einklang gibt, dann ist man in der Lage, all diese Schwierigkeiten zu überwinden mit Fallen und Aufstehen. Warum? Weil man dieses ganz klare Ziel vor Augen hat. Und was wir versuchen mit dieser Lehrerakademie zu tun, ist euch daran zu unterstützen, diese Klarheit zu kriegen und euch darin zu unterstützen, mir auch darin zu unterstützen. Für mich war genau diesen Tag so bildend als hoffentlich für jeder von euch, um uns dazu zu befähigen, daran, dass wir an uns selber arbeiten, ja, und dafür auch die richtigen Impulse kriegen, dass wir diesen Weg gehen können. Und das ein bisschen zu lange Antwort. So I've tried to explain very briefly. I summarized it. What is the goal of this session?
Yeah.
And what was the goal of our Teachers Academy? And that is that we want to help the teachers, to support the teachers in growing into fulfilling the mission of the school, the Scola Thomas Moros.
Yeah.
Not only fulfilling the very limited mission of getting to the Matura, which is part of our mission, but only a part, but actually in growing into fulfilling the larger mission of the school that we have, and that is to form young Christians who can learn how to think, who can learn how to take responsibility in this world.
Yeah.
So,
okay, good.
Yes, there was one more,
oh, yeah?
two more.
Okay.
Just a short thing. As I understand it, it's normal and important to see what we say and what we communicate with students.
Yeah.
But in this school, I think what we say is clear, because this is, for example, the topics that we have during the education process, and which the state gives us to school. But the main question is here how we do it, I think.
Yeah.
So the question how we do it can be different.
Yeah.
Maybe this can give some answers. For me, it gives some answers. I know what I have to teach, but the question is how do I do it? How do I interact with the students? Am I just teacher pupil? Yeah. On one hand side, yes.
Yeah.
On the other side, it must be clear that we are two human beings.
Yeah.
I'm a human being and the student is a human being, and we're just persons.
Yeah.
Very different. And that we interact as persons also. And that we are not only about the topics, but also about, that can inflow during the teaching process.
Yeah.
Can be about how do you feel today, and that the students are
Yeah.
feeling kind of an environment. It's
Yes.
not the school itself, it's some kind of environment.
Yes, that is exactly it. Is the really the task, and everything else is just pieces of the architecture. But the task is to create that atmosphere, that environment that allows for that virtue to grow in the students. That at the end of the day, you said it exactly right. You're a person and the student, like this, the teacher is a person, the student is a person. And we have this encounter because what is really happening in the classroom that's important, and you have to do these other things, but there's two ways in which you can do them. There are multiple ways, but there's different ways in which you can do them. And this is not about adding something else as a teacher. This is not about adding something else to the students, but the way that I do it can be more intentional, more alive, more oriented towards that exact reality that I am a person and you are a person and you are a child of God, and I have this responsibility because of my role vis-a-vis the student to help you become something. So in the way that I ask you the questions, in the way that I greet you and welcome you into the classroom, in the way that I offer feedback to the students, in the way that I engage with them, the way that I discipline them, all of this can all take on that color of this orientation of drawing them out into greatness. And I hate to cut such a good conversation short, but we're running up against the matura of my day, which is to get to the aeroport at a certain point. So I will have to leave in a few moments. And so I do want to kind of transition to bring things to a certain closure for the day. But I think this conversation should continue, in whatever you have faculty meetings or something. towards this, because I think this is the fundamental question. This is the fundamental question as to what it is that you're about and how do we do this. And to say, I think that it's important to remember, like when we were talking about the virtues, but very practically, very specifically to this, I mean, you've encountered this to some degree, but it's messy, and it's going to be messy. And as a teacher, to be willing to get, how do you say, roll our sleeves up and get into the dirt of creating, of tilling new ground is there's a romantic vision, of course, we can have of it. These wonderful people working in the hillside, tilling new ground. 1,000 years ago, these monks cultivating the land. Oh, it's lovely. But then to actually get into the dirt and get the bloody knuckles and dirt and smell, this is not a clean process to do this, but it's a good process. It is a good process to retake the land and cultivate something new, right? And so what I mean by this is that there are things that are not going to work. There are things that are going to be frustrating. There are things that are challenges, and that doesn't mean that you just simply have to accept them, but we need to be able to face them head on. And I think the fruitful thing for a school like this is to be able to engage, especially, and like you are doing, to continue to attack these issues by bringing things forward to one another and say, this isn't working. I don't think this is working. Here, let's try this, and have that attitude of not just collaboration, but like artisans in a workshop together, working on a sculpture. You need to chisel away at things, and you maybe get in each other's space, but you need to be, it's all about, to be okay with this sort of healthy disagreement or constructive disagreement about what needs are. Because I, as a teacher, might have my needs, and there might be different ways to meet those needs than what I might see. But if I don't bring them up, we can't have that kind of fruitful discussion. In American, we have a phrase that usually is applied to a circumstance that is, you don't want to say something about some subject because it would make big arguments or something like this, right? And so we say, well, we don't want to open up a can of worms. I don't know why that's the thing, but open up a can of worms. Worms like, creatures. I don't want to open up a can of worms, so we don't want to address that topic, and so we avoid it. But I think an appropriate thing is that if you don't open up a can of worms, you can't go fishing, right? Fishing, you put a worm on the hook and you fish. But you can't catch any fish if you don't open up the can of worms. So I mean, there's good things that can come out of that as well, and I think that there's potential for that kind of fruitful discussion. As I'm sure you've been having, because no school is founded and in its first decade of life without a lot of that going on, and so I want to wrap up. I want you to we started with your dreams. We started with the idea of 10 years down the road, and then down at the end of your life, what is it that you want to have accomplished? And I want to leave you with this. You have all these slides in your booklet, and if you'll permit me to just quick flip through to find what I am looking for. So some practical principles about practicing magnanimity and humility are in there. And so I don't need to tell you them. It's extensive text in there about these things. But to look at yourself and say, as part of understanding what your mission is and how it can fit into the mission of the school, to reflect on the question of what are your dreams, visions, what have you, that for your personal life, for your school, and for your nation, whether that's the region, the Austria, or the whole of Europe, is what are your dreams for this? What do you, not just you want to accomplish, but what are your dreams, not for yourself, but for these things, and how can you begin to serve towards that? You've already identified something, and I think I would propose to you as the last thing I say, that you restructure the narrative about one beautiful observation that was made. You said that this will be the last school that forms real Europeans. Is that correct? Is what a parent said. And I think this is touching. I would encourage you to change that narrative. This is not the last school. It is the first school that is going to form real Europeans, because you are not dying. Europe needs new life, and you are the first, not the last, You are the first school that will form real Europeans.